everyone, Elise LashGordon, and it's been a couple of months, but I wanted to continue my video series about the rest of my hospital stay so that way I can at least document everything that's been going on. So I've switched locations. I'm now in my living room, and what I wanted to share about a few things. I'm going to put some socks on. It's gotten cold outside. So hospitalization day one, I shared about how my one fake boob, the percentage of the tissue oximeter, the amount of oxygen in my tissue went down to 39, and it was kind of critical, so no one was feeding me. So then what happened is that so no one fed me in case they were going to take me back to surgery. I did not end up going back to surgery, but here's what they did do, which I thought was very fascinating. I don't know if they've had experience with this before. However, I think it was one of the residents, honestly, I'm not sure. But it felt, so my right fake boob, so this one, I think was slumping off to the side when I was kind of laying down, and it was stretching like the arteries and the veins that they had reattached. So with this resident or med student, or I don't even know who, had the idea, let's push this up a little bit, give it more support. So they got all these ABD pads, which pretty much is code for really thick gauze pads. Gauze. Lots and lots of gauze. So I said that really weird, I don't know why. So they put up all these gauze pads, got the bra and closed it, and said, nobody open it. However, if you remember from the last video, I still had to be checked every hour on this Doppler to make sure we could hear the of blood going through these flaps. So what did they do? Smart doctors that they are, they cut a hole in the middle because the flaps are right here in the middle. So they just cut a hole in the bra, in the post-surgical pretty pink bra. So my previous videos, when you see me wearing it, that's a replacement. I was like, y'all better get me a new one if you're cutting holes in this one and I'm supposed to wear it for like weeks after surgery. So they cut holes, and basically the instructions were, nobody open the bra. Do your Doppler readings from outside. So within a day that got resolved. Give or take, I think. Finally they ended up removing the big pads, and then everything was kosher. The second complication that I had to do with my hemoglobin. So I've had chemo now. I had chemo for like 5.5 months or whatever it was. And, you know, my lymphocytes were down. My white blood cell count was down. All these numbers were down. But everything had really evened out before surgery except for my hemoglobin. Great. What do you do when your hemoglobin's low? There's nothing to make it go up except for a blood transfusion. So at this point, you know, we're not too thrilled that I might need a blood transfusion, but if I need it, I need it. So they're like, okay, we'll wait until you become symptomatic. And then if you become symptomatic, then you're getting a blood transfusion. Fine. So we waited, and that evening I became symptomatic. So, which I don't really remember. So I got a blood transfusion. They're like, you'll feel so much better after the blood transfusion. They're like, how do you feel? And I'm like, the same. The same. Next day, how do you feel? A little bit better than yesterday. And that was one thing that I kept saying in the hospital that just kind of kept me going. You know, they'd be like, how are you doing? And I was like, better than yesterday. You know, challenging thing for me is coughing, sneezing. Those are very hard things when you've been cut in half. Just saying. So one of the things, so besides those complications, and because of the first complication with my right boob not participating, then I was put also on bed rest for like a day and a half. So the next day they want me to get out of bed. At this point it's Thursday, and I'm like, I'm still catheterized. And this is MS related probably, but, you know, sometimes the techs are trying to, like, empty your urine bag, and great, whatevs. Go for it, empty that out. But then they were kind of, like, moving the tube to kind of get the urine to go into the bag so they could, like, empty it. And at one point the nurse had, like, was holding the tube, and my bladder spasmed. And she was like, I was like, stop, whatever you're doing, stop. My bladder's like, no. And the nurse was like, I've never felt that before. And I was like, of course, because I am a teacher for all things hospitals. So at that point, the instructions were, nobody touch my tubes. So they did get me out of bed that day. I was very nervous to get out of bed with the catheter still in, but they got me out, got me to the chair, and I sat there for a few hours, and then they got me back into bed, and that was that. So, on to the next video.